Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Commodity TV and the new edition of our online interview presentation. We want to get an update from Hannan Metals, and Michael Hudson, the CEO, is here with us. Yeah, good evening to Australia. How are you?
Good morning to Europe, Jochen.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, guys, first of all, I have to tell the audience here that I'm a shareholder of the company, of course, also. And I'm really happy shareholder because you achieved that Teck went into your company with a 9% stake. And I think this is quite unusual that, let's call it a small explorer like you, have now JOGMEC and Teck in the boat. And so we want to get from you an update on this. And Michael, I start now the presentation, and I would say the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Jochen. Always a pleasure. And this is a little deeper dive into Hannan. So we are listed on the TSX-V under the symbol HAN. We took a decision a number of years ago to say, okay, we're going to take some big hits. We're at that stage of our careers and in the capital markets where we could do things that were probably a little bit riskier, not taking legacy projects and just trying to make them bigger. And I do that and have done that, and it's a very good strategy. But we are here in the business of finding big mineralizing systems in a fertile part of the world where nobody's looked before. So it's big grassroots, new frontier areas looking for two very different styles of copper mineralization in Peru. So I think that's the background. We're a very technical company. We're driven technically, been in the capital markets for a long time, but we're really motivated by discovery, I think is the key point. As the overview, I'm a geologist. I've been in the capital markets for 20 years. I've been working for over 30 years as a geologist, 10 years in a major. So I've seen a lot of sides of the business. I sit on 4 different boards on 4 different exchanges around the world. So I see lots of different ways the market acts and understand how to access capital markets. But at the end of the day, if you can get the right team together in country and around you corporately and have a right project mix, it's a pretty good start for one of these companies. Mm-hmm. So I am a geologist, as I mentioned, so I'm an optimist. So just be aware of any forward-looking statements that I may make. This is really the key slide, the big takeaway. As I said, we've secured large land positions. We're a top 10 holder in Peru, where we are one of 2 only juniors in that position, and the rest are the BHPs and the Rios and the Techs and other large companies who take big land positions. So it's very unusual for a junior to do that, especially in Peru, because the ground holding cost is quite large. So you've got to find a way to fund that alone before you do anything. We've gone into these new areas to search for 2 very different types of mineralization. One is a sediment-hosted copper style, so very much like the Kufa-Schiefer or the Central African copper belt. This is the second most prolific form of copper in the world in terms of where copper is produced, and that's a joint venture with the Japanese we have. So that's 1/3 of our land position, and the Japanese government through JOGMEC are fully funding that. I'll go into those metrics in a moment. And then a few hundred kilometers south, again in the back arc or over the Andes in the high jungle, where people really haven't looked before, we've got a 150-kilometer long strike extent of about half our ground position looking for porphyry copper gold deposits. And porphyries are, of course, the major source of copper in the world and what Peru is famous for.
Yeah, Michael, as you said it already, you are one of the 10th largest tenure holder, and you said already about costs. How much does it actually cost per year approximately to hold that?
Yeah, so we've got about 2,000 square kilometers, which is it's 20,000. 200,000 hectares, and it's $3 per hectare per year. So $3 per hectare.
So that's 600,000.
That's right.
Yeah, but that's not too bad. Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's a big chunk of change before you do anything, and of course, about half that position is paid for by JOGMEC. So and half is coming out of our treasury. So no, but you know, you've got to narrow down your search space pretty quickly. Paying fees to the Peruvian state is all well and good, but you're not finding anything with that money.
Absolutely.
So that's the double focus. As I mentioned, at San Martin in the sediment-hosted copper style, we have the JOGMEC, which is the arm of the Japanese government, and their mandate is to joint venture with companies around the world. And they have in the low 20 joint ventures with different companies, majors and juniors, around the world. And we're one of those 20-odd projects. And they're fully funding up to $35 million to take the project through to feasibility. The key earn-in is over 4 years. We're just in about 2.5 years into that, where they have to spend $8 million in the very high risk stage. They'll continue to go on and fund if they take that choice, of course. And then, as one thing you mentioned, Teck, we bought in as an equity holder, as a shareholder of the company. They just subscribed for $2.6 million last week, I think that was, just recently, for 9% equity in the company. So we have the largest mining company in Canada behind us. We've got the Japanese government behind us, and you know that it's quite humbling because it's support of the concept and the people, because we haven't drilled a drill hole. So not yet, and very hard, and we'll talk about that. But it's, as I've talked to you about before, it's the world changing. Copper is in a huge deficit going forward. We're going to mine and consume more copper in the next 20 years, as we've talked about, than we have for the history of the Earth. We need big new discoveries. We just haven't made those. So this is the big new discovery potential of Hannan. And this company, there's a lot of risk in it. It's high risk because it's early stage exploration, but literally there's multiple opportunities to become a multi-billion-dollar company if we could be successful in any of these areas. So high risk, high reward. And the key point down the bottom is, and I think I just touched on it, we know how to make discoveries, made a lot of discoveries. I've had 25 years in Peru. The people I work with in Peru are a great bunch of Peruvians. And also one other person I should mention is Lars Darlenbori, who's worked with me for 15 years in Peru and outside Peru. And he manages the day-to-day and is doing a fantastic job there. And Kathy Vargas, our general manager, I've worked with since, she was pregnant the day I met her, and now her kids are growing up and living overseas. So that's the sort of the generational change that I've seen through Peru. So that's the company, and so well-known people to each other who want to make big discoveries. The metrics I can show you in a little bit of detail. Here's a chart from the last few days. You can see the kick up we had with the Teck investment. So we're hitting yearly highs over the last week or so. Still a tiny little company really in the space, around about 30 million market cap, 100 million shares out, and now $3.5 million in the bank after we pay some bills. So that's actually a conservative number, but we've just run a $500,000 airborne survey in Valiente. Not a lot about that in the public domain yet, and there'll be more information coming as the data's processed, but that is a key step change in the nature of that project. So an enterprise value around $26 million. Key point there, Jochen, is that they're all stock options, so staff incentive options, not one warrant in the company. So we haven't had to fund the company for many years because of JOGMEC's involvement. And then when we just did the Teck deal, that was done without any warrants. So no overhang with any warrants. So a very tight structure. Very good. Okay, so then the next slide is the people. I won't go through everybody, but I can say that we've got a very good mix of people, from Lars, who I mentioned, David, who's my mentor, who got me into this junior business 25 years ago, Georgina, who's World Bank, OECD, Australian government, government relations in a way, but that really undersells what she does. But she really helps at the strategy end from the big end of town. Kira is the director of exploration for Lundin. and she's there on her own personal account. Lundin don't have any interest in Hannan, but we did do a deal with them many years ago in Ireland, and that's how we got to know Kira, and she's a very good independent director. Nick's had my back for many years in the corporate world, and as has Mariana. So again, that's a good thing about growing old, and perhaps we can both share that. You start to deal with people you want to deal with, and you get a very good core group of people around you.
Absolutely.
Sorry, you're going to say?
No, that's one of the key factors for success.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. In anything we do in life, right? And exploration, if people don't know the mineral exploration business very well, it's no different to any other business in that respect. One thing we do very differently these days in the mining business, and one of the big reasons that we've been able to succeed so far in these new areas is that, and why were people there? Why have we been able to go into new areas, and why are we're not the smartest people in the room. We're pretty smart, but we're not the smartest people in the room. And as soon as you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably not. But why are we going to areas where people haven't before? Well, 20 years ago, these were drug growing areas in Peru. It was a very difficult and dangerous area. And as a consequence, that's cleaned up over the last 20 years. And literally 25 years ago, I had military escorts into these areas that were working in. So I knew a bit about the areas. But the local people really hadn't had much exposure to any mineral exploration activities, let alone mining activities. There's been a lot of oil exploration going out in those areas, but that's a very different business and not always the best example of how they were treated in the 70s, 80s and 90s and how we treat people today. So we go in and basically say, if you want us here, we'll be here, and this is what we're doing, and we'll demonstrate that to you, and this is the benefits we can bring. But if people don't want us, we just literally say, well, thank you very much, then we wish you all the very best, because that shows utmost respect to the local people, where they're in control, essentially, right? They're not feeling out of control, that we're coming in there with the mineral rights that overlay their land ownership, and that happens anywhere in the world. Any explorer goes in with a dual application of them looking for minerals, and the government gives us the right to look for minerals, but that is in parallel with freehold ownership or leasehold or native title or whatever that other land use may be. But if we give the freehold owners and the people who live there the power that they can say yes or no, rather than feeling they're forced, that's a big change. And that's how we approach our business. And it's the utmost way of showing respect to local people and working together. And that's the way we've been able to work in these areas. And over the last 2 or 3 years, really genuinely build up relationships and close relationships with the communities in which we're working. Here's the top 10 holder. The average market cap of a company in the top 10 is 50 billion. You heard we're 26 million. So there's somewhat of a delta difference. It's just something that's a bit different. That's our wonderful team at San Martin. We've got about 5 geologists working in San Martin, plus support staff, and likewise in Valiente. So it's 10 geologists is quite the field team, actually. And for every geologist, you need 2 or 3 or 4 support staff, being drivers and field assistants and cooks and camp helpers and everything. So it's quite the team that we've got doing all this work. So let's get into the projects, right? We talked about the philosophy and the metrics and what makes a successful explorer and what doesn't. Here we are in Peru, and can you see my cursor if I move it up and down here?
No, you have to do it different. You use the whiteboard, please.
Okay.
So now do it. Now yes. You can draw.
Okay, there we are. Look at that. So that's the San Martin project, and that's the Valiente project down here and further south. And we're over the major porphyry and epithermal and VMS and every other mineral style that exists is mainly in the Andes. So you see we're about 70 or 80 kilometers outboard of the Andes in the high jungle, areas that literally haven't been looked before. Now Valiente is rewriting the geology of Peru in that area, because these porphyry deposits weren't supposed to be out there. Now we found at least 7 porphyry sticking out of the ground, porphyry centers, and each one of those centers has multiple porphyries. And that wasn't supposed to be there. And the age of those porphyries is the same age as what's happening 70 or 80 kilometers west, which is geologically also very unusual, but it is, and it's the fact it's there, and very similar to what happened down in Argentina with down here in Bajo de Alumbrera, where that deposit, one of the world's largest copper mines, was found in a similar area out of the normal area it was explored for. So that's basically what we're doing. And then sediment-hosted deposits do form through the whole spine of the Andes, up from Colombia down through Ecuador, which is here, down through Peru into Bolivia. There's some mines, and then further south into Argentina. There's only those mines in Bolivia of that style, so that's a bit more esoteric, something that hasn't really been searched for and is a bit different. So we'll first focus on this San Martin area. Now, if I go like that, I've got to clear this now, don't I? So that would be that one. There we are. So the analog here is the Kufa-Schiefer. The Kufa-Schiefer today is the largest silver producer on Earth, the seventh largest today, the seventh largest copper producer. It's been known for literally thousands of years. The rebirth of it was in the mid to late 50s. So for many years, for 50 plus years, it's still producing it as one of the largest producers out of Poland. And it's a little bit unknown. It's a very skinny horizon. It's 1 to 2 meters thick. You can see the discovery hole at the bottom there in 57 was 2 meters at 1.5 copper at 657 meters depth. Now, we've gone through this area in a 10-kilometer area. Our permits extend for more than 100 kilometers, and I'll point that out in a moment. But and certainly the grades here can get very high. And there's one specific horizon we found, which is shown here, that extends for that 100 kilometers. There's a lot of copper there, but finding it in zones that are continuous, and that will come through drill checking, because the outcrop is very, very low. Will determine that. So it's a pancake. We want to find the flatter dipping areas, not the steeper dipping, because from a mineability point of view, we can wander along those flat areas if we're ever to mine it, as opposed to trying to mine something that's vertical and thin is very difficult. So that's another key secret to this. And there's a lot of flat areas, so that's not a huge issue. This is the ground position. So we've got the joint venture with San Martin here with JOGMEC in blue, and yellow is the ground we hold in our own right at the moment. And we've done a little bit of work out here in the yellow. Most of the work is focused in this orange box here, where we're actually going through drill permitting now, and where that 10-kilometer trend is where we've done a lot of the work. So, and you can see the scale here, just to point it out, is 100 kilometers. So it's
really large.
it's a large area with lots of copper. And the first drilling ideally will take place early next year. So what we've done here is we went in, found boulders in the creeks a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Then we went up in those creeks. We chased those boulders up the hills, found the source of where those boulders were shedding into the creeks, sampled that mineralization. Then we did a lot of soil sampling, and that's what's shown here. We used a lot of real-time technology, I suppose you could say, portable XRFs, which are literally handheld analyzers. So we're able to analyze copper as we were taking samples. And so if we had copper anomalies, we're able to take closer space soil samples. We're able to take a little bit of soil back to our field base, where we put it in a microwave and then dried it and consistently assayed. So that's really important to get consistency of data, quality control, and we've been able to do that even at the field scale. One of these portable XRFs, which is the handheld analyzers, costs about $50,000 US, but we were able to pay that off within a few months of not sending samples with donkeys and cars and trucks to Lima and then paying those assay costs. So real-time data, and Technology.
Michael, question. I see some houses there just above the writing.
Yep.
Is this your field camp or is this a little
No, this is
village?
one of the little villages. There's two little
Wow.
villages in
Good.
this DR1 area. That's Kunchiako, I think, or it could be Pukayok. They're the two villages that exist here. They're small little villages of 20 or 30 people, and we have agreements with those communities to do the work.
Good. Super.
And then when we found the outcropping areas and we found soil anomalies, we were able to channel sample those and dig down with literally shovels and expand the outcrop areas. And that's where the 105 channel samples ran 0.9 meters at that previous grade of. I'm going back now. I shouldn't do that. That's very bad presentation skills. A couple of percent, 1.9 copper and 27 grams silver. So there's one other key thing we've done here. So that's the soil sampling and the channeling and how we went about exploring it. But we flew LiDAR. Now, LiDAR is a laser imaging detection and ranging is what it stands for. And it's basically what you've got on your iPhone. So if you've got one of the new iPhones, you've got a LiDAR camera, and it throws out lots of laser beams, hits a surface and bounce back to the receptor. And then you get a point cloud of a shape and a form. So if I pointed at your face, of course, your face would come back looking like 1,000 points in a point cloud in 3 dimensions. Now we can do that from aeroplanes, and literally we can send millions of laser beams per second out of one of these cameras. Most of them hit the trees, and in fact, it's been used as a tree mapping and mapping the health of forests and the like technique. But now with the technology, the ability to deal with so much data and the ability that the cameras or the sensors are so sensitive or are able to have so much detail, some of those laser beams actually get through the forest and the jungle and hit the ground. And then we can start to map those each little layer there is the geology. So you can start to map the geology. Now that's over 14 kilometers. What we need is continuity. So we've found continuity at least, you can see this is an isometric view looking down at the ranges here. And each different layer has a different way it weathers. So it can be imaged individually. You can see here there's a fault that's offset that layer that matches with that layer. And the fault is now where this river has broken through that range. So geology controls geomorphology and geology is everything. I'm a geologist, so I should think that, but you can absolutely see that there. Thank you for pointing that out. So we could find a soil anomaly here or a channel here and wander down and say, well, there's the next one, there's the next one. So that's how we've been very successful in thick jungle with soil cover at finding each one of those individual points and where that layer, it's only 1 meter wide. It's not, and it goes up to 4 or 5 meters and goes down to half. So it is variable, but that's how we've been able to find with all those techniques in a very quick time frame. So technology, real-time assaying and LiDAR has played a huge role in what we're doing. And then this is looking at just in that 10-kilometer area. There's a scale down here at a kilometer. So this is about 10 kilometers long. And you can start to see each different number of channels and the widths and averages. And it's all averages out around about the meter at a couple of percent. And some are higher grade, some are lower grade. And you can see these are the areas we don't really want to look at. This is a cross section through here. So if we took a slice through the earth, there's the hill up here, which is a hill here. And you can see that the topography, it goes down to a lower area. And out here, this zone here is steeper, which is this one here. And then this zone dips into the hill that way, and it's quite flat. And that's kilometers of mineralization there. And that's what we need to drill test and determine the continuity, find the highest grade parts, find we call it the facies control, the parts of the rock sequence in that horizon. That's a reduced facies. It's got a lot of organic carbon in it. and find those areas where there's a lot more carbon and there will be a lot more copper. And that's our challenge. And it's not for the faint-hearted, and we're very fortunate to have the Japanese government fully funding this project. Okay, so we just wipe that off. Thank you. And that's enough about that project, because we've only got a little bit of time remaining. And here now is the next project, Valiente. So it's a few hundred kilometers further south than San Martin, which was just here where we looked at. And now we're going to go down here. This is a very different style of target. It's a porphyry copper, and we've got a very big land position there, about half our land position, about 1,000 square kilometers. We've got, as I mentioned before, 7 intrusive centers. We've done the work in detail on one of them, and that's got a number of porphyries and an epithermal zone, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Our aim is to build another 1 or 2 of these areas over the next 6 to 12 months. So we'll have 3 areas in detail mapped in the 2 dimensions. We'll start drill permitting here, like we've done all the drill permitting, and we're waiting for permissions in San Martin. We haven't started the drill permitting here, but that will start very shortly at the Balian area. And we go through all the environmental and social permitting, but it will take a year or more to get this up the drill stage. But here's the thing. Hannan is not going to turn on a drill result tomorrow. So it's a stock. If you want to be in something that could be potentially very big and you believe at least half of what I'm saying, buy the stock, put it in your top drawer, and come back in 2 years or something like that, and you just don't know what the hell we could have drilled. But we're going to be drilling a whole series of these major systems, 7 porphyries, 100 kilometers of sediment-hosted copper. And not every one of them will work, because that's not how nature plays itself. But we only need one of them to work, and it's a company maker. So never been drilled before. We've just flown the magnetics. Nothing in the magnetics in this survey, because we haven't released any of that data yet. But that is a step change for this project. That's what Teck really loved, what we were doing, and what helped them, I think, technically get over the Rubicon to invest was the concept that we'd permitted and nearly completed that survey. So that why is that important? Because the porphyries are magnetic or non-magnetic, but mainly magnetic, and we can differentiate them. So it's an easy way to target these things. And the magnetics is already showing us so much more than we could have ever hoped to see. Here's another 100-kilometer trend, lots of geology and red boxes and permits. So the black are our permits, the red are the porphyry areas. And so you can count, from Previsto up in the north here to Pucakunga down south, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 porphyry areas. Each one of these is a porphyry. We've got stream sediment anomalies. We had some early stage magnetics that really helped us here that Peru Petro made available. That was what made us really aware of this area, was that new government data that had just been released. We went in there and during COVID sent one very smart geologist and a few of his support team, a guy who knows porphyries backwards and literally can pick a little rock here and a little rock here and assemble a massive porphyry system from that little bit of information. We let him go for a year, literally, during COVID, and he came up with these discoveries. We had the magnetics to help us. We had the stream sediment sampling we'd been through, and that basically picks the catchments that are anomalous. We've followed all those areas up. So that and then one other key point is we've done some dating. So you can date rocks and you date certain minerals. In this case, we've dated the zircons, and that's the age of the intrusions, because the zircons are reset when they cool. And we do some uranium lead dating, which is a very well tried and true method. And we found that these are Miocene age, so about 14, 15 million years up to 19 million years. That seems very old, but in geological sense, it's very young. And this is the key mineralizing epoch, one of the key mineralizing epochs in the Andes. They weren't meant to exist out here, the Miocene porphyries. So there'll be papers, geological papers written about this alone, let alone, you know, the wealth that can be created for the local people here and the shareholders of Hannan with any discovery that is made. But the key area that we've been looking in is in Valiente. So that's the area that we're just going to focus in here now. So I'll go to that now, that Valiente area. And now can you just wipe that for me, because you're very good at doing that. And this is the Valiente area. Now, the slide looks like it's a little cut off. There we are. Thank you. This is just the rocks and soil samples. The grid is the soils. So we've literally taken thousands of soils, applied what we learned in San Martin with the XRFs, and done it again here. And you can see there's some very high grade anomalies down here. RH is what we call Ricardo Herrera, and up here in Sortilegio. These are kilometre by kilometre copper anomalies in soil at very high grades. These are the porphyries, and you know, you can see the same story in the molybdenum. Gold rings these areas, but two porphyries sticking out of the ground, and then now the geology on top of them. And I'll show you some of the pictures of the rocks. All the geology has context. These are leached caps. They've got all the right veining, the different styles of veining, the right style of alteration, all the ingredients that suggest that this is a porphyry and a mineralized porphyry. The grades we see in the leach cap, where the weathering is literally taken the metal and moved it down to what we call probably an enriched zone, and certainly, you know, we need to get into the fresh rock. We haven't got there, and that's why we need to drill. But the grades we see in the leach cap are very good. They're good grades. You get 5 to 8 times upgrade from what you see in a leach cap into the hypogene. And so if that holds, then we're really onto something. But, you know, this needs to be drilled. It just needs to be drilled.
How much money do you think you need for the drilling there?
We're a year or so away, so we're well and truly funded to get us to drilling. We're not going back to the market to seek funds to explore these. Now, drilling it's not actually that remote here. We're probably about 40 kilometres from a major town where we have a 5-level office and accommodation, and it's a major town called Tingo and Maria, and so we can drive into these areas for the most part, and then probably hand carry in for a few kilometres, drill rigs up little tracks, and that's the lower impact method. So the drill cost, we haven't costed it here, but it will be, you know, probably. Look, I shouldn't really guess, but it's not going to be top. It's not going to be, you know, top quartile costs. We'll be able to do it for a relatively good price, because we're not trying to go, you know, hundreds of kilometers where there's no roads.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's people, and we can, you know, there's townships and villages close by. So and then in between, this is the 5 kilometers. So this is a 2 or 3 kilometer trend in the middle here, and I'll just write on it again, of boulders that go above 0.1 gold. So this is an epithermal target through here over 3 kilometers, which is a little higher. It probably was formed above the porphyries, but now, you know, it's all eroded and in a bit of a different circumstance. So 2 porphyries in one area already, with a big multi-kilometer gold anomaly with rocks and soils that match that too. So it is quite amazing just alone the opportunity here. Now I'll let you clear that again as I move forward. Now, just looking at this Ricardo Herrera, which is the southern porphyry, we've mapped it all in great detail. We found, and this is way too much information, but there's a date up the top, and for any geologists listening, they can read the associations here, the amount of quartz veining, the alteration. It's got all the parts of the jigsaw you want to see in a porphyry system. Okay, and then here's some more rocks. This is actually the gold target. It's got gold running up to 2.8 gold in those boulders. This is, I said it was 3 kilometers, but it's written here as 2.5 kilometers with all those gold zones, and the gold in soils is anomalous. And, it's, we're getting over a gram in gold in the soils over this large area. So it's, remembering 1 gram of gold is the average grade of a mine worldwide. So it's at this early stage again. You'd be happy as a junior company just to have this target in this would be a company making, company storytelling target. This is 1 of 7, let alone what else we've got. So
I see here unexplained Gossen boulders. Is this rock looks like Gossen, isn't it?
Well, this is Gossen. So what that means is that we haven't found the source.
Yeah. No, but
so
it's really
Gossens,
interesting.
We've got sulfidic rocks, but we just haven't found the Gossens in outcrop yet.
Okay.
So
no, because
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was in Egypt years ago, nearby Hurghada, and I was walking over Gossen fields. That was crazy. That was crazy what I saw there. But unfortunately, the project was not realized due to political constraints and huge problems. But I've done a site visit down there, and the rock looked exactly like this on the surface.
Yeah, a Gossen is a weathered sulfide. And so it's common to find Gossens above mineral deposits, and also where there's just pyrite, fool's gold, without any metal. So you've got to make sure it's an ore-bearing Gossen. But no, they're a great indicator. You should keep that in your head, Jochen, and one day the politics of Egypt will change, like it has in these areas in Peru. In 20 years' time, you may be staking some tenements there.
I still have the sock.
Let's see what happens. Enthusiastic. So again, really, this is just the same story told about the same porphyry in a little more detail. And through the absence of time, I'm just going to zip through these more technical slides. Again, potassic alteration is generally what you see at the core of, you get these rings of propylitic, phyllic, potassic alteration that zone you into finding the core of these systems, and that generally is where you're finding the better grades. These are just some random boulders and some assays pending, but all the right rocks at surface. It's just not a soil anomaly. It's a soil anomaly with great context. And then this is going to the north, the second area that we've done some work. We've got boulders. Here's the age dates again. So the Miocene ages, and then we've got gold greater than 0.1. We've got copper at up to 20% in rocks in surface in these areas. There's 3 porphyry areas that we've identified here, north, west, and east. In Spanish there's the scale. But again, another area working up, and this is way too much information, and nobody's ever going to put up a TAS Plutonic Middlemost 1994 diagram, but it's basically plotting some of the minerals in the rocks, the quartz, and I actually I forget what's on the vertical axis there. But what this shows is that the rocks are quite quartz poor, which means they're alkaline porphyries, which means they're in the copper gold class, very similar to the Cadias of the world in the Macquarie Arc here, or that part of the world. Quite a desirable form of porphyry to find because it's got the gold, which the major gold companies are also looking for. So these are not calc alkaline, which is a different class, which is a copper class. This is an alkaline class, which makes them even more interesting technically. And then some more samples. Just we're finding around here. There's in this area we've got float up to 25%. I said 20 before. I underestimated. We've got these weird breccias that run over 100 grams moly. That's uber high grades, right? They're just but they're all indications that the system's working. These are mineralized systems sticking out of the ground, and who would have thunk a year or so ago that these were here? And then really rounding up, because we've had a nice time talking, but we should round this up and just say that we're looking for big new deposits, fully funded with the sediment hosted copper with JOGMEC, looking to be drilling there early next year, and that will be an amazingly watershed moment for that project. And then 100% in our own right, we have the Valiente project. You've seen a couple of the porphyries. We've got 7 of them. The forward-looking statement, a warning, there will be more, because these things don't form in isolation. This is a whole new porphyry district. We have Teck, who've just come in the last week or so to support the philosophy, the projects, and the people with 9%, 2.6 million reasons they voted for the support of these projects. And yeah, it's unfortunate that Peru is so slow to permit things. We have people who know how to permit. We know how to work within that system. It's just a matter of that system being what it is. And Peru is a mining country, and we'll continue and work with these projects. But it's just a moment where we're doing a lot of the groundwork that needs to be done. And you can see the support the projects and the company are getting. Thank you.
Okay, super. Thank you, Michael. Great. Yeah, it looks really like a very, very compelling story, despite it takes a little bit more time, of course. That's normal, as it's greenfields. But one of my questions is to the end here. Has Teck sent any geologists to the ground? How did they evaluate that they want to invest $2.6 million into your company?
Well, without breaking any of I can't speak for Teck. They're an investor, but I can say, and I don't think it's breaking any protocols. Of course, they were all over the project and all over the technical data and under confidentiality. So they would never, any company like Teck would never make any investment decisions without getting to know the projects in detail over the long term. And getting to know the people, because again, it's reputational risk for these companies if they get themselves involved with people that won't advance the projects, don't know how to advance the projects, don't know how to operate in country, are too promotional without being technical and advancing the projects. So there's a lot of reasons, a lot of check boxes that big companies have to make, of course.
Absolutely. Super. Michael, thank you very much for the update. Quite long, 43 minutes, but it was great to listen to you. Now I know even more why I'm a shareholder of your company. And I think you have a very successful, hopefully, path in front of you. And wish you good luck for 2023, definitely. And I have a good feeling that we will get a lot of good news then next year from you guys. And hopefully drilling starts.
Yeah, next 1, 2, 3, and 4 years. This is a long-term play being set up here, and not just because we're waiting for drill holes, but it is really quite the story. Thanks, Jochen.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was the real deep update of Hannan Metals and the CEO, Michael Hudson, who is a geologist, and what you really saw, obviously, in this presentation. It is a lot of geology, but this makes finally the success. This is exactly what we need for the future, because copper, silver are in deficits and will stay in the deficit, and we need much, much more than we can really imagine for the next 10 years. And those are the projects of the future. And this is probably one of the reasons why JOGMEC and Teck invested at that early stage into this company. And on the one hand, doing a joint venture, on the other hand, doing by now a capital injection, but securing 9% by Teck is really a major step. And you should really check out Hannan Metals. The company is still quite cheap. And I have a very good feeling that next year, probably the big resource cycle restarts again after Corona. And so for that reasons, we will see much higher copper prices, silver prices, but also gold. That is for sure. And take care. Thank you very much for watching us, and bye-bye from Switzerland.